I had just been at Mount Rainier and I was driving away, watching it fade. You know, the fog and the wall of cloud just causing it to fade away. And it was a mirror image of what was happening inside of me. And out of nowhere, I started to cry. That was the memory that came to me this morning while I was sitting waiting for my daughter at the dentist. Not really a memory I want to be thinking about, but for some reason it was just like replaying in my head, and it felt like I was sitting in my car with my head against the window looking out in that moment, feeling those things. And I was like, why am I thinking about this right now? And it probably is because I recently went through a situation that felt all too familiar, or I guess was bringing up those same feelings that I had in that moment. And while in that moment, I didn't really understand what was happening. Looking back, I now do. So I processed it just like I do everything else. I find writing very cathartic. So I wound up writing something and I posted it to Facebook, but this is not really a writing platform. So I thought I would share the story and the lessons I learned from that day, with the hope that if you feel this way, you know that there's hope and that there is a way out, because I found my way out and you can too. I don't know if you've ever been to Mount Rainier, or maybe you've even been to the Grand Canyon or something like that. So majestic, so beautiful, kind of leaves you in awe. And I had visitors in town. I had just moved to Washington State, and we went to Mount Rainier to check it out. And I was so excited because I love nature. So we were there. It was a great day, just exploring, and we were heading home. Nothing eventful happened. I mean, it was just a nice day. Checking out an amazing place. Should be thrilled and excited, you know, like new beginnings. And I thought I was excited about it, but then I was in the car and we're driving away, and I'm looking out the window, and as I see Mount Rainier fading away and the clouds kind of taking over and the fog taking over, I just started crying for absolutely no reason. Now again, I didn't know what was happening then. Now I look back and I'm like, no, there definitely was a reason. But back then, there really wasn't a reason. I didn't really understand. So I was just quiet and I was trying to like wipe my tears. I didn't want to freak anybody out, because for those people who know me, like, it's unusual for me to just start crying out of nowhere. And especially after doing something cool like that. So after a while, I just couldn't hide it. Like, you know, when you cry and you start to sniffle, and I was trying not to sniffle, but I couldn't help it because your nose starts to run. So what was I going to do? Just like let it all run? So anyway, I started to cry, and, you know, people in the car were like, what happened? Why are you crying? And I really didn't have an answer. All I knew is that I was deeply, deeply sad and feeling lonely. There I was in a car filled with people, but I just got this deep sense of loneliness and didn't know who I was, felt absolutely lost when I should have been feeling excitement. It didn't make any sense at all. When we moved, I was so excited to move. I wanted to leave so bad where I was living, but now looking back, I realized I wanted freedom. And I wanted freedom from the people who knew too much, people who would bring to awareness the things that I would need to confront that felt very uncomfortable for me, and would cause me to have to deal with things that really would be painful to even admit. People who knew the truth, and I didn't want the truth they knew to come to light, to come to surface. So we were off on this adventure across the country, and in a time where I should have felt excitement. Now looking back, I realized what happened was I was feeling like I was looking around, and instead of freedom, I realized I was in a jail cell. I was imprisoned, isolated from everyone that I knew, everything that I knew, every place that I knew. And I was stuck inside these four walls by myself, unable to be saved by anyone. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but now I do, that I helped build the walls that confined me to that prison. Now I can put the words to what was happening. Back then I didn't. To me, it was like out of nowhere. Why am I crying? What is happening right now? But I think watching Mount Rainier fade away, being covered up by a wall of clouds and fog, it was like that's what was happening to my soul. I was going farther and farther away from safety, people who loved me, everything I knew, and who I was starting to fade away, hidden behind a wall of clouds. But it really was a wall that I had built. I had helped build. And although I wasn't the only one building the walls, there was someone else building the walls. At some point, I decided that it was safer for me to be behind those walls. And I had mistaken freedom for that. I think that in that moment, I felt, it was funny because it was like, as I saw the fog fading Mount Rainier, that same fog was lifting up in the form of a hand and started suffocating me. And it brought tears to my eyes, and it took away my voice. And it was a very dark time, caused me to feel lonely. I didn't realize it back then, but I definitely realize it now. But the great news was that at some point I looked around and I realized I don't belong behind these walls. And really what made me realize it was now the girls were with me inside these walls. And there was no way in hell I was going to raise my daughters inside these walls, allowing them to think this was what life was like. So as hard as it was, I grabbed the sledgehammer and I started knocking down the walls. And I invited people who loved me to grab their sledgehammer and help me knock down the walls. And you know what? It was so uncomfortable. You know, demolition is dirty. It's uncomfortable. It leaves a place irrecognizable. But with it, it allows you to throw out the trash, and it gives you a new playing field, a new canvas, a place that you can build what you want to build. And what I did was I went off and I built a place where I'm no longer constricted by limits, by perceptions, by expectations of others. And I think the situation that happened recently caused me to feel like those walls of expectations needed to be built, or maybe I was starting to build up those walls again. And it's been very hard for me to be like, oh no, we're not doing that, because that's prison. But it caused me to question a lot of things. So what I want you to know is that if you know what I'm talking about, if you know that darkness, that loneliness, if you know that deception of this is freedom, but really when you think about it, it's a prison, I want to encourage you, grab that sledgehammer and start breaking down those walls, and invite people who love you to help you. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be messy. It's going to look like a mess for a while, and it takes time to even trash things. And then it takes time to rebuild. But my friend, I'm telling you right now that it's so worth it, because you don't deserve to live inside those walls. You don't deserve to have those kinds of limits placed on you where you can't be who you are called to be, who you are designed to be. Expectations that are placed on you by other people don't belong there. Those walls don't belong there. The only person you need to please is God. So I invite you to grab your sledgehammer, to knock down those walls and experience the freedom that God has given you, because that's what you deserve. And remember along the way that you have the strength within you to do it. You're stronger than you know.